And I love this because first part is we have this overview of the prepared slides and then the Q&A. Now we will have an opportunity for more conversation because we will be having now our panel discussion. And this, by the way, is a panel discussion based on the Pathways project, Moderate a Panel Discussion. And as I read through the project, I realized, you know what? Most of the panel discussions I've either moderated or attended have actually been speeches followed by Q&A, not really a panel discussion wherein it's just a panel really. Nobody gets to have their own 4 to 5 minutes of just uninterrupted time. So that is what we will be doing here. We will start right out with a panel discussion, of course, after very brief introductions. So that's where we will ask each of the panelists to very briefly introduce themselves. Hi, Philip. So now we have two Philips on the meeting. So very briefly to introduce themselves. And let's start with, we have two ladies and one gent. So let's have our lady first very briefly introduce herself. Julie?
I am 83-year-old and I discovered Pathway a year ago. And I am now finished with 4 paths and my life changed because of Pathway.
Thank you very much, Julie. And she is too humble to mention that part of her life change is being a popular blogger with over 44,000 hits, I believe, with her Pathways Experience blog post. So let's move on now to who's closer to me on the screen. Well, he's moving more. So let's have Graham introduce himself.
Hello, I'm Graham Cairns. I'm also on Pathways. I'm currently doing my 3rd path, but unlike Julie, I haven't finished any of them. I'm at level 3 on one, level 2 on another, and level 1 on the 3rd. But I am also something of a geek in terms of technical, and I'm providing tech support for the Pathways guides here in District 69 and also for the online Pathways guides as well. And that's what I'll be talking about a little later in my.
Thank you very much, Graham. And let's move on now to our 3rd panelist. Brian, would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, I got into Pathways a year ago, a little over a year ago, a few days later than Julie, because she jumped the gun on me and I decided I'd wait till the 1st of the month. I've completed my visual communicator path, and I'm working on my dynamic leadership, and I've completed level 3 and going into level 4.
Thank you very much, Graham. And I am your panel moderator. My name is Michelle Alba-Lim. I'm a past district director of District 7. Currently, I belong to 3 districts. I was a Pathways ambassador in District 7 and then a Pathways guide, which helped me to discover online attendance. And I am like Graham, Brian, and Julie. And Scott as well, who is with us. I am a member of the online Pathways guide team. I also, started the Pathways discussion forum in October, little knowing how huge it would become and how important it has become for Pathways rollout around the world. So let us now move on to our first question. And Graham had mentioned he's somewhat of a geek, indeed. So I wanted to kick off our discussion, our panel discussion, jump right in there. We are not going to pull punches here. This is going to be a panel discussion where we speak as honestly as possible. Of course, always focusing on the positive, but we will also share whatever there may be in terms of issues or concerns or potholes, as Julie likes to call them. So, Graham, many think that Pathways requires a lot of technology savvy. As a geek yourself, what are your thoughts about this?
I have to say that Pathways requires some technical skill. You can't not be able to use a computer and do Pathways unless you are going to choose the printed path. And I wouldn't recommend that for a number of reasons, which I'll talk about later. But you don't have to be an expert. Pathways, as it runs on Cornerstone On Demand, which is the software underneath it all, will run on a laptop, it'll run on a PC, it'll run on an Apple, it'll run on an iPad, it'll run on a tablet, it'll even run on your mobile phone, although not as well as you might like. There are some technical issues which we need to help members, not so much in this club, because in this club we're all used to working with computers, but in our home clubs where people aren't particularly tech savvy, some of us are going to have to help others. For example, when you open anything in Pathways, for reasons best known entirely to itself, you get a little window which does not open to the largest size. You have to enlarge the window or you miss out on buttons at the bottom. And that's one of the traps for young players. The second technical issue, though, is that people say, all right, I'm going to be given the evaluation.
Okay, he said technical, and then he had a technical issue. Oh, go ahead.
Have I gone,
okay.
have I was going to say the second technical issue, which I would mention, is that a lot of people believe that they have to be emailed their evaluations. That's not true. Print out a copy of your evaluation guide the same way that you would take your manual along if you were using the traditional program. Have the evaluator fill the form out physically in front of you. You can then do with that form what you like. You can stick it in a drawer. You can throw it away. You can scan it and upload it to your Pathways area if you want, but you don't have to do an electronic version of that evaluation. And that's something that a lot of people are unaware of, and they're very concerned about that, and they needn't be. If you just want the physical copy, have your evaluator write on the pieces of paper that you give them and then stick them in a drawer the same way you would have with your old manuals.
Thank you very much, Graham. And talking about concerns, another concern that has been raised very often is, oh, Pathways is only good for the millennials. We're going to lose our more mature members. So I would like to ask you, Julie, to talk to us. Tell us your own experience about that.
So for myself, I was DTM already. And the second time I got again to advanced gold, communication gold, and I had enough of the old manuals and repeating them again. So I embraced with all the problems and potholes about opening, like Graham said, until my son came to visit and he showed me that you can open all screen. And if you open the whole screen, then the small things doesn't appear again. And two other technical things which disturb me most on Pathway. For me, Pathway, which was called before, the revitalized the program, revitalized me. And I begin my blog in May in level 4, and I never had one day I didn't write from May.
Yes, that is amazing, Julie. Thank you so much. And so many people would refer to Julie's blog for their information and their solutions to little potholes encountered. And I know that Brian has been one of the early Pathways pioneers before it was even officially launched in his district, long before it was launched in his district. So Brian, being another tech geek yourself, let's get rid of all the, or most of the technical concerns up front. So Brian, tell us, what are your thoughts about the technology requirements with Pathways?
But there is one that hasn't been mentioned, and that you have to give permission for the URL. You have to give permission of that URL where the Pathways program is residing, so that the pop-up windows will work. Otherwise, you can be working away, and as I was trying to do, until Judy came to my rescue and said, "I'll give me 5 minutes and I'll show you how to do it." And sure enough, she did, and I got by the pop-up situation. But it's not, you don't have to open your pop-ups to everything. You just have to the program that that they're using. It's not Toastmasters International. It's another one.
You're right. And I promised that we would cover technology early on. We're hitting it hard. So one more question about technology. Graham, what would you say, what would your advice be to people who say, "Oh, I don't do computers"?
Yeah, look, good luck. No, seriously. You can do the printed version. You can pay an extra $25 US and get the printed version. Now, if you do choose the printed version route, and there's nothing wrong with that, just be aware that A, you can only pick 5 of the 10 PARs, and B, you don't get to choose the electives. The electives are chosen for you if you use the printed version. That's the serious limitation. Quite frankly, I would suggest that if you are not tech savvy, what you might like to do is find somebody in your club who is, and arrange a separate meeting. You know how often clubs meet on the second and fourth Mondays of each month, and then you've got a 5th Monday of the month 4 times a year. Use those extra meetings to actually everybody bring along their laptop or their computer and have a working session where non-tech savvy people can be shown by those that do know what they're doing how to get Pathways working. Don't be afraid to ask for help is the question. There will be somebody in your club who does know what to do, and they'll be willing to help you out, even if it's over a cup of coffee at your local coffee shop.
Mm-hmm. Great suggestion. And in fact, it would help in some districts, it would help that person to achieve a goal. For example, in District 7, and you're free to steal this idea, in District 7, we have a AAA program, our own district's AAA program, wherein you can earn points for being an early adapter, an early advisor, which means you help somebody else with getting on Pathways, and an early achiever, which means you complete a certain level. So you might actually be helping somebody else if you ask for help. So talking about helping, Julie, you have been helping people all over the world, and you have zoomed as far down as New Zealand from London to talk about Pathways. Tell us, what are some of the common concerns that you've heard, especially those that may not have been expressed here yet in the questions that I've asked?
So there are different concerns. Some are expressed in the, I see as mediator in the Pathway Discussion Forum, where there are a lot of seasoned, let's say, Toastmasters complaining about change. And my answer to them, of course, usually, if I have time, is that, yes, you can wait, but if you want to remain expert, if you want to lead, just go and use both programs, learn so you can help others. Another question I discovered, there are many who don't know anything about Pathway. And so sometimes we have to explain them from the beginning what means activate, what is the difference between launch first time or you can launch it again, what is icebreaker and how they can find an icebreaker. So I had more concern about why to do icebreakers twice, and I don't understand them, because more you speak about yourself, more you learn about yourself. And there are so many things to do and to tell about our lives.
Yeah, thank you, Julie. And I've also heard that commonly expressed. Some people sound so surprised that they have to repeat icebreakers. Although in the Competent Communicator Manual, if you do 2 Competent Communicator Manuals, you can't jump to the second project. You also need to do the icebreaker. So yes, it is a little bit perplexing why people are reacting to the repetition of the icebreaker. And talking about reactions to pathways, I was wondering, Brian, because you have been on the, before it was even pathways, you had been talking about it. Tell us, what is your perception? What are your thoughts about how pathways has evolved from when the talk about revitalizing the education program to now? Give us your thoughts.
Well, I've been following it since 2014 when we got the email that said, "Do you want to be one of the educators?" I think it was called, that helped to plan the system. And Pat Johnson gave a very good introduction to pathways at in Kuala Lumpur in 2015 on what we could expect. Was then called a revised educational program, and then suddenly we started hearing about pathways. And I like the word pathways. It is a nice word, and we are an education society or organization. And a lot of the big universities, colleges, even the high school I've found, talk about pathways. And they're nothing to do with Toastmasters. This is where education today is going. And when you talk about pathways, I think that's a better word to even use than using the word Toastmasters, because not many people know about Toastmasters. But when you talk about paths and pathways, they do. So I've been quite pleased with the program. However, I have had my little difficulties with the technology, but as any of us here will do, we can share a Zoom session with you and we can solve most people's problems very quickly.
That's right. Thank you so much, Brian. We do have a wealth of experience and knowledge in Global Trainers Online. We are truly fulfilling our mission of helping not just trainers, but people around the world to become better. Unfortunately, I'm looking and I think Rajan has dropped off. He was very interested in this concept and I hope he will be able to log back in again. In the meantime, though, I wanted to hear from Graham about, you shared with us in another club a complete story about how you'd chosen your first path and what you learned from that manner of choosing your path. Could you, in a much briefer form or manner, could you share that with us here?
Certainly. One of the things when we're choosing paths is if we follow the assessment, we often get offered something that we didn't expect and didn't particularly want. And so a lot of us simply ignore the assessment and go with what we decided we were going to do in the first place. I know you're different, Michelle, but we'll talk about that later. What I would say, though, is when you are working out which path you are going to follow, don't just look at what comes up in levels 1, 2, and 3. Because they're pretty much consistent. You can choose across all of them. Look at what happens in levels 4 and particularly in level 5. Because in 3 of the 10 paths, you are required to do a high-performance leadership project. And a high-performance leadership project, as you're aware, anybody who's ever decided to go for DTM, it's quite a task. And 3 of the paths require you to do a high-performance leadership project. Others require you to do 25 and 30-minute speeches. If you're not interested in doing the long speeches, don't choose presentation mastery or whatever the other one is. If you're not interested in HPLs or you don't particularly want to do 3 of them, don't choose innovative planning, effective coaching, and I don't know what the third one is, but I know that I'm doing 2 of the 3. Lucky me. So yeah, look ahead at what comes up in levels 4 and 5.
Yes, so thank you so much for sharing. It was a wonderful learning experience for us to hear you, Graham, when you. Yes, that is worth noting, that we need to look ahead. And I'm sure some people may be wondering, how can we look ahead when we can only see level by level? Well, that is where, as I mentioned in the first half, if you D57 website has a plethora of materials. One of them is the Pathways Catalog, which breaks down all of the paths with all of the projects per level. So you can take a look at that. And those who are really quick on oh, there you are. Graham already posted one, but if you could also post the one from District 57, that would also work. The one that he just posted now is a new one, relatively new one, shared by A. Chisholm. It's also very well structured. Regardless if you want to look at the District 57 version or this one that Graham just posted on the chat, but you can look ahead and see what the requirements will be, so you don't do what Graham did, which was end up choosing 2 paths, both of which have the fabulous HPLs. So moving on, I was wondering if we could hear from Julie just very quickly. I know there's so much information in your blog, but if you could just very quickly tell us, what are some of the most popular posts that you had created on your blog, Pathways Experience?
Yes, the most popular post with about 1,000 people having read that, is exactly how to choose a path. And the second most popular is before you choose a path. Look at level 3, 4, and 5 required and explaining the differences. And then sample the icebreaker, and old people can and do.
Yes, and Julie demonstrated that. Thank you so much, Julie. And talking about choosing how to choose a path, I guess, Graham, too late, huh? You didn't get to see that particular blog post. So now maybe we could have some advanced info on something else, such as Speechcraft, which is still going to be part of earning credits in Pathways. However, is not yet, there's no official material for it yet. Brian, however, has created his own material, or not created, but has pulled from Pathways. So Brian, could you tell us briefly, what are you doing, or what did you do with your Speechcraft, and what has the outcome been?
Well, I started this Speechcraft in January for 6 weeks. Yeah, we had 6 different participants, not to every meeting. However, 2 of them, which were students at Royal Roads University, kept me busy because I gave them the icebreaker and they could do that online without being in Pathways, because that one is free. Then I printed out the next manual for them to give them the next manual, so that, which is to do a speech, get your feedback, and represent the speech a second time. And the third part of that is to do the evaluation of somebody. So I thought, well, you know, that will take us to the end of the 6 weeks. No. I had to give them the final project, which is, you know, to take a difficult subject, research it, and come back with a presentation. And the 2 of the students went all the way through it. However, I've just checked, and they haven't gone through the tick, tick, tick that they need to do online, so that I can see that they completed their level 1s. I really, because they were totally brand new to Toastmasters, one of the participants who didn't actually go on, came to the first meeting with the printout of the icebreaker and gave us an icebreaker. So the material is very well received by those people, that the introduction to pathways. And that's why I feel that it is a shame if we have to give them old technology when we've got such a great tool now to help new people come in. And like I say, let Pathways sell itself.
Yeah, thank you, Brian, and you're a really good ambassador for Pathways. One thing for those who are listening to this recording without being here, I just want to emphasize that this is an experiment in using Pathways materials to conduct the Toastmasters branded program called Speechcraft. As of now, as George Marshall has, yes, Brian, I'll get to you. As of now, as George Marshall has pointed out, the only official materials are still the traditional ones. However, Brian, I believe, is taking up the challenge. He has already emailed Dan Rex, our CEO, Dan Rex, about it. But just to be sure, do not get into a fight with your VPE or whoever approves your Speechcraft projects if they say no, that is not an official version, because indeed it is not yet an official version. Just wanted to make that clear. Yes, Brian?
I just want to add, the two students that completed the Speechcraft starting next month are going to hold the Speechcraft for some more students, and they don't know any traditional material in Toastmasters. So they're going to teach the same, what they learned, they're going to teach to others.
Yes, so now I have to express this concern that we have now used a Toastmasters branded name, Speechcraft, and perpetuated its unofficial use. So as I said, I am not the person in authority to decide. I just want to put that caveat that this, I love experimentation and I applaud Brian. That's why I wanted to include this question. However, I also want to make it clear that as of today, this has not been officially approved yet unless Dan Rex has responded to Brian. And so to anybody else who wants to try it, be aware that if your Vice President for Education refuses to approve it, then, well, you probably need to work beforehand and ensure that your Vice President of Education will approve it before you go forward, since there might be different perspectives on it, such as that's not official. So I think we have covered that, and let us now, we are at 10 minutes past the hour, which means we have about 20 minutes more, if we include the wrap up, then about 15 minutes more. So I would like to pause at this point and see if there are any questions from our audience before we move on maybe to a few more questions that I've prepared. And while people are thinking, I also wanted, I'll get to you, Scott. Were you going to talk about what you have on the chat? Because I was going to read that. Yes, please do. Please unmute yourself. You sound better than me, so please unmute yourself.
I wouldn't say that. I'm just referring back to Graham's suggestion about the evaluation forms. While we can keep our evaluation forms wherever we want, I think it's a really good advantage if we upload it to our e-portfolio. For the simple reason is we might move houses and things get lost, but if you put it in your e-portfolio, you've always got it there. You can always refer back to it. Or if you should leave Toastmasters for a short period of time and then come back, all that information is just waiting there for you. So while you don't need, it's not a requirement to put it into your e-portfolio, I think it's a, if you can do it, I think it's a great advantage because you'll always have it there. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Scott, I agree with that. Definitely agree. Yes, Graham.
I would concur. I would also point out that some people aren't going to want to use their e-portfolio, and that's their good luck. If you're going to use your e-portfolio, bear in mind that you can use it for a lot more than just uploading your evaluations. If, for example, you want to upload the audio or the script of the speeches that you have given, those can also be uploaded to your ePortfolio. You can upload pretty much whatever you want within reason to your ePortfolio, and that keeps it all together. Quite frankly, if you're going to start putting up videos, they're going to be really big and it's going to take an awful long time to upload and to download, and you're better off to use a Google Drive for that. Scott,
Thank
you
you.
wanted to
And,
respond?
Yeah, I just wanted to
Scott,
butt in.
let's hear from Julie first. Let's
Okay,
hear from
yep.
Julie first. She had her
Okay.
hand up, and then it will go back to you, Scott. So Julie, you had your hand up.
And Dennis wanted also to ask a question, but
Okay.
first I would like to finish with about evaluation forms. I just learned yesterday that the evaluation form which we save and print inside the project are not electronically fillable, and that everyone should know. And if we want to find a form that can be filled electronically, we can save them from the tutorials or from a box which is called evaluations. And if we save them from there, then all we can send and they can be filled electronically.
Correct. Thank you, Julie. Or we can take a shortcut and go to Matthew Klenoski's website or Pathways Guide's website.
Why should we go on other when we have them in Basecamp?
Okay. So it's different strokes for different folks. That is one way. Sometimes it takes longer to go through Basecamp than just click into one available URL. So though there are different options. Now, I think Dennis, did Julie say, Dennis, you have a question? And then we'll go back to Scott. Dennis, is it still about evaluation?
Yes.
Okay.
What I was going to ask, if we are in the online meeting and you're making the speech, do you send your evaluation form before your speech to the evaluator and with an email, and then the person fills it in and then sends you it back if it's an online meeting?
That can be done. If the person has planned ahead, that can be done. If it's on the spur of the moment because it was not done before, then within Zoom, you can actually upload the file in the chat and the person can click it and it opens up. That can also be done. Let's go back to Scott finally and then Brian. Yes, Scott.
Okay. Thank you, Michelle. Just getting back to ePortfolio, one must remember that for every single instance, you can only upload 20 megabytes of information. So that's why, so you'll just need to be wary that anything over 20 megabytes, it won't go into ePortfolio because the file will just be too big. So in one single instance, you must make sure that it's 20 megabytes or less.
That's a really good point. 20 megabytes, which means that the entire speech cannot be uploaded as a video, just an audio, because a video of 7 minutes, there's no way that would be 20 megabytes.
Yep.
So thank you so much for that reminder, Scott. And Brian, you had your hand up.
One of the problems we have at Rhodes is, as you know, we're both a hybrid club. And sometimes we don't know who the evaluator is. So I've suggested to the members that they have their evaluation already in an email. And as soon as they find out who their evaluator is, they just type their name in and shoot off the evaluation form to that person. And it's a good idea to have a spare generic evaluation form available, because if you don't get the other form and use that generic form, because pretty well all the questions are on there, you might not have the specific thing, but you should get that from the introduction of the speech.
Okay, that's another really good point. We are learning. I mean, even I have been on Pathways since May last year. I'm still learning new things listening to this. It's So amazing how much information there is to share. At this point, it's 17 minutes after the hour. So we have just about 10 minutes before the wrap up. I would like to encourage our guests. I see now we just have Crystal come in, and we also have had Sajan Nair. I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly. And of course, Philip has been with us from the start. The other Philip, he was here ahead of our Philip. Philip Ahern, and then of course you have Philip Bendesh now. We also have Alex Shi. So Alex, any of you who are guests, if you have a question, just unmute yourself. It's the little, as I mentioned earlier, if you bring your cursor down to the leftmost corner of the screen, you will see an icon that looks like a microphone. You can click on that to unmute yourself. So if anybody has a question, please do. Crystal, I think you're unmuted. Does it mean you have a question now? Help me to hear if Crystal is speaking. I don't hear her.
No audio. The other thing is that if you are having problems with your microphones, if you click on the chat button, you can type the question into the chat and I will pass it on for you.
Good point, Graham. Thank you. And the chat will be 1, 2, 3. It will be probably the 6th or 5th, 7th from the left. So you will see the little blurb that says chat and you click on that. Sajan, do you have a question? I think, yes, there you are, Sajan.
So hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to connect with you on this forum and on this platform. So I was originally connecting using the my mobile, and I wasn't able to hear you clear. So I was also traveling from another place. So great. I don't have a question. It's all pretty clear, and I'm sure many of you are much more acquainted with the Pathways program than most of us here in Oman. The Pathways program was just launched here about 2 weeks back. So we're just getting acquainted with it. I'm sure more questions will come up as we go forward. Yeah, so great. It was nice to participate in this. Over to you back, Michelle.
Yes, and Sajan, I just realized I had a big duh moment. You disappeared from the other screen and I thought that you were gone. And then I realized, oh, that's him. Because I remember your name coming into the Zoom alerts. So I'm so happy you're here. And just for the benefit of other global trainers online, Sajan is also a trainer. He has some fascinating ideas about training. And I'm looking forward to him attending our future meetings. So welcome so much, Sajan, that you came despite technology issues and all that. And what about, we have Crystal or Alex or Philip? Maybe Philip, because I see you've got your video open. Would you like to unmute yourself? Philip Ahern, I'm pronouncing it correctly.
So can you hear me now?
Loud and clear. Oh, somebody tried to help by unmuting him.
I've just unmuted him again.
That's the challenge of having so many co-hosts. I never touch the mute button anymore. So Philip, I'm sorry, Philip, you got muted again, so we are not hearing you right now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. And we're sorry we missed whatever you were saying for the last few seconds.
No, all I'm saying is that somebody mentioned you can do it on a cell phone or my mobile phone. Well, that's what I'm on a Google too at the moment. And Zoom comes across a bit differently when you're on a mobile phone. So, yeah, my name's Phil Ahern. I'm in the Victoria, South Australian, Tasmania district. I've been in Toastmasters for about 20 years, and this is a very exciting challenge for me, Pathways. I think it's going to be great.
Thank you, and we agree with you. Well, we don't think, we already know it's great because we've already been on it for quite a while. So welcome so much, Philip. And
I will say, if I can say something.
Yes, please.
I just found that level 1, 2, and 3 was nothing new, except level 1 because I hadn't actually given an introduction to myself for ages, but I found that in terms of the basic skills, it was pretty easy. But level 4 and 5 are a real challenge, and that's going to be fantastic.
Exactly. The excitement is, or the re-energizing of people who have already felt that it is just same old, same old. Yeah, that has been the experience of several pathways. People have been on pathways. Thank you so much for saying that, Philip. We just have somebody new who came on. Pixel, I'm sure that's not your name. That's your device, I'm guessing. Pixel
No,
2XL.
That's me. That's me using my Pixel 2.
Ah, Brian. Okay. Thank you for not keeping us in suspense. I'd be wondering who is Pixel 2XL. Crystal, would you like to unmute yourself?
Oh, hello.
Hi there.
I actually just listened to the pathway yesterday, and I have a question. Is that it is say that we have to upload the feedback to the base camp every time, or that is it necessary, or because I heard we have to go to the next grade by the agreement of the system, but is it necessary to upload the feedback every time by ourselves?
Great question, Crystal. And no, it is not necessary at all to upload your evaluations. In fact, as Brian mentioned earlier, you don't even need to upload them at all. Although Scott and many of us concurred, it helps because, for example, you might misplace, like me, for example, I will misplace these pieces of paper later on. If they're scanned and uploaded, then I can go back. I have honestly had to go back and check which speech I had done. And then I realized, oh yes, I've done that already. I ended up with more than one elective when you only needed one because I liked them so much. I realized I had 3, looked at my evaluations, I had more than I needed. So you don't have to, but it's very helpful. I hope we answered your question. Yes, Julie.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I want to tell Crystal that if you upload your evaluation, you are the only one who can see it.
Oh.
So it is not for anyone else, only for you.
Okay.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you. That is a very important point because some people have been worrying about that. You know, they want to get candid feedback, but they don't really want to publicize it to the entire club. So yes, thank you so much for sharing that. You are the only person. At one point, some people were thinking the VPE could look, the base camp manager could look. No, unless you share it with them, which you can upload it to another place where you communicate and you say offer feedback and then you upload your evaluation for them to read. You can do that, but absolutely if you put it in your e-portfolio, nobody can take a look except yourself.
Oh, thank you.
Yes,
and
yes.
I actually have another question.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Is that I have been a member for more than a year, but I have never received my monthly book. And I wonder whether if I start the pathway, then I can change my address so that I can receive the book afterward.
Oh, why is that? Are you referring to the Toastmaster magazine?
Yes. Because I have written a letter to the headquarters, but I have never received the book. So I wonder if I start the pathway, I will receive it.
Well, that would not be related because the magazine is shipped out by order fulfillment in headquarters. I hope you did not unintentionally check digital copy because when you fill up your membership form, there's a check mark for digital copy. But we can offline later on. I can help you. Let's message each other. And thank you very much. I think that was Graham's point there as well. Was that what you were saying? Okay, thank you. And we now are at 4 minutes to the end of our session. Is there any other pressing question that's related to what we've discussed or to pathways that anyone would like to raise at this point? Yes, Philip, our Philip.
How Philip, thank you. As opposed to my Philip, it's great. Thank you, Michelle. whoever's laughing, whatever. I do have a specific question. As you know, I'm very much involved in some mentoring, and I'd be interested to hear what the experience of some of the folks who have gone past level 2 have got specifically on the pathways mentoring.
Oh, thank you. Philip's question is about our experience with mentoring. With level 3, though, it's just the introduction to mentoring. And then there's this other program, which is it's not off-site, but it's a separate program that you can activate called the Toastmasters Mentor Program, which then has the more advanced steps. So just very quickly, I will answer. It gave me a lot of pause for thought. I have been mentoring and coaching people for years. I love the way the Toastmasters made it very clear what's the difference between coaching and mentoring. And then also they had very good checkpoints. Did you do this? Are you this? Are you this? And this. I liked it. I really liked it. So I don't know if I'm the only one, but that's my feeling.
No, I've actually heard that, and I've been asked to present some material for another district in a couple of weeks' time. And if anybody's interested, could they contact me and perhaps give me some insight? I'd be happy to talk with them a little bit later. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Now we are down to 2 minutes. So what I would like to do is to just briefly wrap up with we will just skip our usual going around the room asking the guests for comments, because really this is a panel discussion that I would like to share with people beyond Global Trainers Online. So at this point, I would like to wrap up our panel discussion, which is part 2 of the full 90 minutes that we had. For those who arrived a bit late, we had a first part, which was the overview of pathways. We will also be sharing the link to that in the same group where you found us, hopefully, which is Global Trainers Online, GTO. And as well as the second half, it will be split. The recording will be split when we post it, so people don't have to go through the entire 90 minutes. You can watch just the first section, which is the overview of pathways, or you can watch the second section, which is the panel discussion. So I would like to thank our our members of the panel, Julie, Kertesz, great big hand. Thank you so much. Graham, such wonderful information and multitasking with the other roles. And of course, Brian with so much insight before Pathways even be called Pathways. So thank you so much, everyone. And it's been a wonderful honor and privilege to be moderating this panel. I hope this is not the end of our conversation. Global Trainers Online is always there. You can post questions, or you can message me or any of the any members of the panel. So at this point, I will now be wrapping up, and we can end the recording.